Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before today's class, I have something to say, to confess. That is why I teach Chinese in YouTube. I have watched nearly almost all Chinese teaching classes in YouTube, and they teach Chinese. They teach very simple Chinese for beginners, and because Chinese is relatively a very hard language for English speakers or for those who don't have a similar system as the language of Chinese. So we only teach very simple. They only teach very simple Chinese using short videos. That's the common aspect for most Chinese teaching channels. I have a lot of shorts, but I don't want to do those shorts anymore or that often because I want to focus on the teaching thing, on the video thing. And the reason why I teach Chinese is not only to teach the language. That is to say, I don't think it is very necessary for most of you to learn the language because we are in an era of AI, right? Artificial intelligence. So if you want to travel to China, if you want to communicate with Chinese, or if you are interested in the culture, if you are interested in the history, or you just want to marry Chinese, you don't have to learn the language, right? We have many machine translators to do those work for you. You don't have to put your efforts, your valuable times on this learning process. So why do we need to learn Chinese? I think it is necessary, or we have to learn Chinese, or you have to learn Chinese during this period. And the reason is that you have to learn Chinese because you have to know what is happening in China. You have to understand, more importantly, you have to understand what is happening in China. Not only knowing what is happening or understand why those things are happening in China. Why? So once you know why those things happening in China, you have your ways to avoid those tragedies to happen on your own or in your own countries. That is my purpose to teach Chinese on YouTube. So as far as my observation goes, what happened in China or what is happening in China is also happening in some major democratic countries, unfortunately. And I don't think that many people living in those countries knowing what is going on, or maybe you're just aware of something very strange, right? Is happening around you. Things are very weird recently in these 10 years, 5 years, but maybe you don't know why that is happening. That is one aspect for you to learn Chinese. You have to know the language, not only to know the language, but to know the people who speak the language. That is very important because once you know the people, then you will find a way to learn or to know why why the Chinese have a dictator now, why they are governed or they're controlled by a dictator, or why they're always controlled by some kind of dictator. And the horrible thing, the very horrified thing is China now is a superpower, right? Whether you acknowledge it or not, China is a superpower. It has a lot of nuclear weapons. It has a lot of money. It has a lot of influence on the internet, right? So once you have conflict with that superpower, the result will be disastrous, right? So, so I believe it is necessary for people living in democratic countries to learn Chinese to avoid or to teach their children to learn Chinese to avoid those tragedies happen at least to your own family. That is very important. And to achieve that, in my channel, to achieve that, the first step, is to teach the language, the Chinese. And if there are people who are willing to watch, then I will turn to teach the culture by illustrating or by explaining or by teaching some novels or some novels that I think is very effective for you to understand the people. And then you will know what kind of country China is, or where did it come from, or most importantly, where will they go? So there are a lot of questions asked in Google's. Will China right? Will China blah blah blah? Will China invade Taiwan? Will China invade or will China influence the world? Will the CCP do some kind of things? So if you know Chinese, if you know the people, if you know the system in China, then you will understand or you will know what will happen next. So that is very important because I believe that in the next 10 or 20 years, China will continue to be a concern for for the free world. Yeah, that is very serious problem. Very serious problem. So if you like Chinese culture, it is not to say that you only like the right side of Chinese culture. Meanwhile, the Chinese culture has huge tons of dark sides, right? And I believe it is more important for you to know the dark sides because the dark sides will someday affect your life or affect your country or destroy your country for a certain degree. I'm not to say that China will attack you or will invade you in a military sense. What I'm talking about is China will invade you using its system or using its ideology without you knowing it. That is the horrible, or that is the dangerous part of the Chinese culture. So the first part is for to teach Chinese, of course, and my teaching videos is based on the grammatical framework of English or Western languages, I believe. So let's get started for today's video. Today we're going to talk about how to distinguish verbs and nouns in Chinese. That is very simple. Nearly all verbs can form this format. with a negative word 不. This is a negative word 不. 不, this V is a verb. And I have a mark here to say this is not legit. So you don't say 不睡眠 or 不睡眠. This N is none. 睡眠 sleep or sleeping is a noun. You can't say 不睡眠, so a noun cannot be used or formed with this negative word. So here 不睡, right? 睡 is to sleep. It's a verb, right? So 不睡 I'm not sleeping. I don't sleep. So 你今天睡不睡？你今天睡不睡？你今晚睡不睡？不睡。Do you want to go to bed or not? No, I don't want to go to bed. So this 不睡, this verb phrase is a short way to say no, I don't want to go to bed. Right? 不睡. So this 睡, you can see it's a verb. And next one, 不知道. 不知道. So 知道 is a verb because it can be used with this negative word 不. 不知道, don't know. Don't know. Yeah, it's a phrase. It can be used as a independent sentence. 不知道. 你知道吗? Do you know? Do you know? 你知道吗? 不知道. I don't know. So I have already said, in Chinese, we always delete the subject because Chinese is a language that depends on its context. So when you and your listeners or you know who you're talking about or who is participating in the conversation, you can delete those subjects. 不知道, 我不知道, right? 不知道 means I don't know or he doesn't know or she doesn't know because we know who we are referring to, right? So next one, 不吃. So 吃, to eat is a verb, right? 不吃. No, I don't want to eat. Do you want to eat this melon? No, I don't want to eat this melon. 不吃. So this 不吃 can be used independently as a sentence. 不吃. It's a phrase, right? 不吃. So next time when you see a Chinese passage, you see this kind of format, then you know this 不 is a negative word, and what follows it, right? 50% of the time it will be verbs, right? Because this 不 can be used with verbs or adjectives. Next video we will talk about that. And the last one, 不跑. 不跑. Don't run. Don't run. 跑 is a verb. Don't run. So this is a 不 and V format. So one way to distinguish, or the major way, or the most effective way to distinguish a verb and a noun is to see whether the verb can be used with this negative word 不. So on the right side, 不房子. 房子 is house, right? So house is a noun. So this phrase is incorrect. We don't say that. We don't say anything like that. 不房子 is wrong. 不食物. 食物 is food. It's noun. So we don't say 不食物. Right? No. So 不睡眠 is the same. 不睡眠 we don't use negative words combined with a noun. So that is the way to distinguish a verb and a noun. Okay, I hope you have learned something from this video, and if you are interested in knowing Chinese and knowing the people who talk the language or speak the language, if you want to know the dark side of why there is a system, right, dictatorship system in China, hope you enjoy. So this will be a long journey, right? I'm not the kind of channel who only teach very simple Chinese. This will be a long journey. I don't know if you ever heard the Great Translation movement a few maybe 1 year ago, 1 year or several months ago, the Great Translation movement. That is to say, some translators they translate those Chinese news or documents or those things CCP used to fool its people. In China, they translate those things into English to educate this quoted language, to educate people all around the world to be aware, right, of what is happening in China. So I believe this channel is one part or one version of the Great Translation movement. But I don't want to translate those CCP's documents or news to you. That is, in my opinion, that's bullshit or trash, very trivial things. What I'm interested in is the culture thing. What is rooted in the language? I don't know if the dark side is a very serious language, but I I want to I want to focus on the default, right? On the defaults of the Chinese culture. Of course, Chinese culture is very brilliant, right? It's splendid culture. But I am focusing on why there will be a dictator in China, the fundamental reason for that, so that we can avoid such things happen in our country, right? Okay, see you next video.